So, is anybody here freaked out about the climate crisis, the ecological meltdown, the collapsing economy, or the Republican dismantling of our democracy? Well, I am, and I think it's about time that we have politics that actually deals with these things on the fundamental level. In fact, I'll give you a couple of examples here about the economy. You know that in 1979, the top 1% had 8% of the nation's wealth. By 2007, they had 23% of the nation's wealth. What that's done is lower the amount that the middle class and the poor have, and it's done it so much so that the economy has stalled. Because what drives the economy in our society is consumer spending. So now you got these Republicans talking about more tax cuts. All that's going to do is send the economy down the crapper. Right now, we are no longer a middle-class nation. According to the last census, there are now more poor people in the United States than middle-class people. Our college students owe $1 trillion in debt, and half of them have to go home to live after they graduate. That's what's gone on. There are 4 high schools in our entire district, the 6 counties, that have shops. High schools with shops, 1 full-time teacher. There used to be 40. Okay? This is not trimming the waste. Now, why is this happening? It's because all 41 of the Republican senators meet the diagnostic criteria for antisocial personality disorder, which is a form of psychopathy. And most of the Democrats do. Check this out. Failure to conform to social norms with respect to lawful behaviors, as indicated by repeatedly performing acts that are grounds for arrest. Deceitfulness, as indicated by repeatedly lying. Impulsivity or failure to plan ahead, like no exit plan. Irritability and aggressiveness, as indicated by repeated physical fights or assaults. Reckless disregard for safety of self or others. Consistent irresponsibility, as indicated by repeated failure to sustain consistent work behavior or honor financial obligations, and lack of remorse. You only have to have 3 of those. There are 7. I think it sounds really familiar to me. Also, you know, the largest organized crime syndicate and terrorism network in world history is the Republican Party. And the second largest is the Democratic Party. So I want to ask you, pick your favorite congressman or woman in American history. What will sending 1 more of those people into Congress do? Progressive Caucus is already the largest caucus in Congress. Nancy Pelosi said impeachment's off the table. We had 8 years of an illegal presidency. I think that's not acceptable. I happen to be the first person to call on Norman Solomon to run, actually, about 6 years ago. It's kind of funny, because I think what we have to do is find a way to knock these corporatists out by electing community leaders, kind of like Saul Alinsky. The people that you naturally look to in this community are the people who should be in government. So the question is, how can we get those people in there? Well, think about $1 million. If you have $1 million to spend on a campaign like this, what do you buy? You buy TV ads. Well, what if we can reach as many people using the internet, YouTube, community meetings like this, and I've been to something like 20 debates in the last month and a half, all up and down the district. If you can do that, then you've defeated the advantage of the money, or most of it. And in fact, where I live in Garberville. I'm the only Humboldt County candidate. I've been showing my own ads that I advertised on TV on the David Letterman show and on the CBS This Morning show with Charlie Rose every day in Humboldt and Delaware County. It goes to every TV. So there are ways that we can do this. Now, one of the problems I've had with Norman, and Norman and I are pals, I mean, we challenge each other on stuff, but he hasn't done the model that I've developed. See, because the idea was, if I can get elected doing this as the line went, then someone more famous than me, like Norman Solomon, Aaron Brockovich, Jim Hightower, Winona LaDue could get elected, and then 2 years from now, we'd have maybe 5 of us in there. Picture 5 Amy Goodmans and Michael Moores and Andy Caffreys and Julian Assanges in Congress. They will raise hell when the Republicans do the first thing that we don't like. They won't sit back like Obama and the Democrats and let the Republicans frame everything. Can you think of a single member of the federal government, Democrat, who is a leader on framing the path forward? They are all just responding to the Republicans. So when I go back to those 4 things I asked you about, the climate, the environment, the economy, do you really think that electing someone who's got as cool politics as Norman is going to do the job? Norman is doing it the establishment way, even though he's doing it with progressives. He's trying to raise the money. He's not trying to do the grassroots thing nearly as much as what I'm talking about, because what we have to do is build our politics out of the community groups, not tell the community groups what's going on. And I haven't seen many of these people that Norman talks about up where I live. In fact, none of them. So I don't really know what's going on there. But so he is now getting a bunch of endorsements from members of the Progressive Caucus. And the question is, well, how much is he really going to fight these people? Like we needed Pelosi, Woolsey and Thompson to fight Pelosi when they took impeachment off the table. In fact, I started fighting Thompson on this right when the impeachment should have started, 10 years ago, 2001. I don't think Norman's going to do it because 2 years from now, he's going to need these same endorsements. Rahul Grijalva and John Conyers and this stuff. What we need is a group of people who are set to take over the government. Take it away from the corporatists. And I think we need to do this by focusing on 7 major proposals. My campaign is called New Green America. My background is in green politics. I helped found the Citizens Party in 1979 and 80 when we ran Barry Commoner for president, an environmentalist. So I'm running registered Democratic because we can win. In this district, our polls, and I'm the only person who's conducted monthly polls, and the only candidate conducting polls who did not conduct push polls, these phony polls, our polls show that in this district, 72% of the people are going to vote for a Democrat for Congress in this election. Only 10% say they're going to vote for a Republican. 7 months ago when we started our polls, that was 20%. So the Republicans are getting fed up. In fact, I won over a Republican already today, here at this event. So what's happened is, as I've been going around talking about this agenda, no one has said it's too radical to me at all. And here it is. The first one, fight the climate crisis is threat number 1. Get off fossil fuels and nuclear power as fast as humanly possible. Rebuild America's infrastructure around bioregions and sustainability to meet all our needs as close to home as possible. Tax the rich. Medicare for all and expansion of the social safety net. We have to get off fossil fuels as fast as possible because we've let it go for 30 years. I'll give you an example. In the last 2 million years, CO2 level vacillated between 170 parts per million and 280. That's 110% different. We're now at 390, another 110%. Okay, in 1990, the science said we had to reduce our emissions 50 to 80% below 1990 levels by 2000 or 2005. President Obama is saying we can do that by 2050. And half of Greenland's ice is sitting on a layer of water now. So nature has some dirty deadlines for us that we have to make sure we absolutely do not cross, these thresholds. If Greenland goes, you're looking at a 20-foot sea level increase. If just 1/20th of it goes, you're looking at a 1-foot sea level increase, and that will wipe out Eureka, the biggest city in my county. So we have got to take the reins. We cannot just leave it to others. I don't want you to elect me to go in there to just fix it for you. This is about we have to come together and we have to design how we convert around our bioregion. How do we here? You and I are in the same bioregion. I live about 65 miles from here. Okay, we have to come together and define how do we get off fossil fuels and how do we rebuild our infrastructure to meet our food, clothing, shelter, and the rest of it. So, one other thing I'd like to say is I'm the only candidate who's actually changed the world, with the exception of Dr. Courtney, who has developed some incredible life rafts and is doing phenomenal work with cannabis right now. But this world historic figure thing, what happened was in 1987, the first release of genetically engineered microbes was going to take place in the Bay Area. And I organized a campaign out of Earth First where we did everything. We went to hearings, had press conferences, got signatures on petitions, wrote our own legislation that was going to be introduced in the state Senate by Senator Barry Keene, and had a lawsuit. And we lost. And then the night before this test, we went out and pulled up the strawberry plants. That's why I'm the world's first GM crop trasher. And what happened was there were 2 more tests. Both tests were hit by the mindless thugs against genetic engineering and the Strawberry Liberation Front. And the company went bankrupt a year later. There were going to be 30 tests of genetically engineered microbes in the 2 years following. There have been none. So thanks to the work we organized, there have been no genetically engineered microbes released anywhere on the planet since 1987. I'm going into Congress to get things done. I've worked on over 1,000 projects and campaigns. You may have heard of Judy Berry. Well, my footage of her, Judy and Daryl and I were organizing partners, and I was behind the camera. My footage is in her film now. And I can tell you, no other candidate is going to go into Congress and go after COINTELPRO and the FBI like I will. I was supposed to be in the back seat of that car behind Judy. I would have lost my legs. That's scary enough. But they could have killed Daryl and Judy. And I still live with that every day. And they still haven't found the bomber. And the FBI is doing nothing about it. So this is an important local issue we have here. And so finally, I'll wrap up with the second kind of new politics. I would like us to have monthly conversion meetings where we start to look at how we convert, and then we write our own legislation. So I would like to introduce in Congress legislation that you all wrote. And so my campaign, once I'm in there, I'm going to send you video live after every day in Congress and tell you who's doing the good stuff, who's doing the bad stuff, what we have to organize around. I'll have a weekly 3-hour webcast with you. When I come back here for community visits, what I want to do is I want you guys month after month organizing here, and I come to your meeting, okay? And then we wire it up so similar meetings are happening in the same place in all 6 counties, and the people in Marin can start to hear what we're going through, because it'll be a live feed. You'd ask a question here, and then someone in San Rafael would ask a question there, and someone in Crescent City, someone in Hayfork would ask questions, because we have a median income of $35,000 here on the North Coast. Down in Marin is $85,000. We live in the third world of this district. But we have this incredible opportunity. We have Marin. Marin has got, well, my new Green America proposal is Pioneers meets Amy Goodman and Democracy Now! Real simple. The rest of it is Medicare for all and expansion of social safety net, because we can. Why is it we have free cops, free fire department, free military service, but not free health care? Why is it there's $1,000 our young people owe because of their student loans? When I was in college, I paid $215 a quarter at UC San Diego. Why is it so big? We can choose and we can organize ourselves to provide these things, and we're going to have to do it, because to go through the kind of change I'm talking about, a war effort to convert away from fossil fuels and nuclear, everyone has to feel safe to get through it. So the rest of it is end corporate personhood, retreat the U.S. empire, use the military only to defend Americans and their property, legalize marijuana and end the war on drugs, prosecute the Bush administration for crimes against humanity, war crimes, torture, and murder, and electoral reform, ranked choice voting, paper ballots, public financing of elections, get corporate money out of elections. And just a couple of things here. I have a bumper sticker that tells you I'm certainly on the side of the fish. I'm against the drones in the National Forest. And I am a medical marijuana patient. So I'd like to introduce a friend of mine, John Llewellyn. You see, I'm the only guy who's willing to get arrested on the steps of the Capitol doing this. Medical marijuana has improved my life. I don't think another person should spend an hour in jail for marijuana. That's why I'm fully for legalization. Yes, we have this growing problem, but if we legalize it nationally, then we'll have more of a market from the rest of the country. Tom Hartman will start smoking it, because he says he's not smoking it only because it's illegal. So anyway, thank you very much. We have a revolution to wage. I don't think the other candidates are going to help the problems that we're dealing with, and if you agree with me, I hope you will vote for me on June 5th.
The president is polling competitively with Mitt Romney in the red state of Arizona, and so some Arizona officials are looking to birthers to get the president off the ballot. And a new survey puts a majority of Americans on the side of legalizing marijuana. My next guest is in favor of it, and he plans to light up on the steps of the Capitol if he's elected. John Boehner, watch out, that's coming up.
It's a tricky thing politically to jump on that bandwagon, because I think that maybe people see it as taboo still. It's
why it's a ballot measure, Bill, because no politician, even if they thought it was a good idea. Oh my God. Oh. Yeah. As I was saying. Oh, God.
Nearly 19 months since actor Zach Galifianakis lit a joint on television during a discussion about California's ballot initiative to legalize marijuana, someone else has taken up the torch and is lighting up on the campaign trail.
It's a friend of mine, John Llewellyn. You see, I'm the only guy who's willing to get arrested on the steps of the Capitol doing this. Medical marijuana has improved my life. I don't think another person should spend an hour in jail for marijuana. That's why I'm fully for legalization.
Joining me now is Andy Caffrey, Democratic congressional candidate from California's newly configured 2nd District. Good afternoon, sir.
Hi, Martin.
Good evening from our perspective. You use marijuana for medicinal purposes, as I understand it. What are your medical reasons?
Well, I have 3 neurological conditions: post-traumatic stress disorder, attention deficit disorder, and obsessive-compulsive tendencies. And so I use it for sort of a tranquilizer effect. I use it for focusing, and I use it to get to sleep.
So those are strongly mental reasons for using this medication, is that correct?
That's right. I don't have a physical ailment that I'm using it for pain relief.
Okay. Now, 16 states and the District of Columbia already have legalized medicinal marijuana. Why not just stop there? What is your argument for the legalization of marijuana altogether?
Well, I live in Humboldt County, and we have this new district which includes Marin County. And where I live, the median income's $35,000 a year. In Marin, it's $85,000 a year. And our economy is, the bedrock is marijuana. $1 billion to $2.6 billion a year comes into our county. That's a quarter to over half of the income of the county. So this income has dropped substantially since medical marijuana has been passed. And so a lot of people locally are concerned about a state initiative that might make it legal in California and thereby spread the number of people who can grow it themselves. But if you legalize it nationally, then there's actually more of a market. There are people like Tom Hartman who said that if it was legal, he'd smoke marijuana.
So that sounds to me as though you're arguing this from an economic perspective as opposed to a medicinal one.
Well, it's not either or. As you heard in that clip, my primary reason is because I don't think another person should spend another hour in jail for marijuana-related crimes. In fact, I don't even want to call them crimes.
Okay. One recent study found young people who smoked marijuana at least five times were twice as likely to have developed psychosis over the next 10 years than those who don't smoke pot. Does that have any effect on your argument?
Well, I've been living in a place that grows the finest marijuana in the world. It's called the Emerald Triangle, and it's comprised of 3 of the counties in our new district. We've been living with it since the mid-'70s. And a few years ago, I talked to my doctor, who had been the doctor for 29 years in the area, and asked him about effects on people, because if anybody knew, he would know. And he said the only negative effects that he had seen in his entire career in Garberville were 2 people who smoked about 20 joints a day and had esophageal bleeding. And he also had some concerns about young people between 15 and 18. Now, I've also heard some studies from England about that, what you were talking about, and I'm not here as an advocate for using marijuana. In fact, I hesitated a long time before allowing an image to be created of me smoking a joint, because I don't want my being a congressman to cause people, young people especially, to smoke marijuana. But I feel that it's our right to not be in jail, and it's our right to have an economy that produces marijuana. And it is really important to a lot of people medicinally. Their lives are ruined when President Obama comes in here and shuts down the dispensaries.
Okay, well, Andy Caffrey, a great advocate for marijuana, candidate for Congress from California. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us tonight.
My pleasure, Martin.
Coming up, the birthers who never went away, and they're trying to keep the president off the Arizona ballot. That's next.
And Alex has been intently listening to this Justin Bieber story.
Yeah, I have, because I actually have a bunch of Team Bieber shirts over there offset.
You believe the Biebs. You believe.
I always believe the Biebs.
Yeah, it's a good way to go.
Bieb, country, I don't know even who's below that. Thanks, Thomas. The nominee is making it official with a Texas primary tonight from 11:44 to 2:70. We'll look at the new numbers game. And how Rudy, former Mayor Rudy Giuliani, is gifting Mitt Romney with his very own Cory Booker moment. Plus, Jamie Rubin on America's Game of Drones, and a congressional candidate whose campaign is literally going to pot. Now starts in a mere 180 seconds. After the break, joint talks. A congressional candidate from California is running on a platform to legalize marijuana. Is the country ready for a year-long 420? We will ask him when he joins us live next on Now.
Oh, once upon a midnight.
I have a bumper sticker that tells you I'm certainly on the side of the fish. I'm against the drones in the national forest. And I am a medical marijuana patient. So I'd like to introduce a friend of mine, John Llewellyn. You see, I'm the only candidate who's willing to get arrested on the steps of the Capitol doing this.
That was Andy Caffrey, who's running for Congress in California, detailing his unique platform at a rally earlier this month. Caffrey wants marijuana legalized, and if he's elected, promises to light up on the Capitol steps to draw national attention to the issue. Joining us now is Andy Caffrey, who labels himself monstrously green in the Democratic Party. Andy, great to see you.
Thanks, Alex. Nice to be here.
So, Andy, I want to draw some attention to your overall platform, the monstrously green moniker that you've adopted. You're interested, obviously, in the legalization of marijuana, the climate crisis, ending corporate personhood, taxing the super rich, ending presidential crime by punishing it, and, of course, electoral reform. But let's start with the marijuana thing, because it's an interesting issue, and I think a lot of folks feel like the wind may be in the proverbial sails, no pun intended, given the fact that there are now some folks on the conservative side of the aisle who are proponents of legalizing it, including Grover Norquist, Gary Johnson, Glenn Beck, Pat Robertson. Do you think now is a time for, if not decreasing the war on drugs, changing some of our national positions on certain drugs?
Yes, I call it the ridiculous persecution because the time is long past. One of the lines that gets a lot of laughs in my campaign is it would be a big travesty if the hippies died off without legalizing pot first. Where I live, I've lived in Humboldt County, North Coast region for about 25 years, and we used to have a thriving timber industry, but that was throttled. And now we have a very narrow range of opportunities in the rural parts of Northern California, and marijuana is providing anywhere between 25 and maybe 60% of our total income. So our entire economy on the North Coast has made a transformation over the last 15 years, and now it's just time to stop throwing people in jail. No one should be in jail. Over 800,000 people a year are arrested for marijuana in this country. It's just not right.
I want to play a little bit of sound. The president weighed in on the subject of drug legalization when he was in Cartagena. Let's hear what he said.
I personally and my administration's position is that legalization is not the answer. Nevertheless, I'm a big believer in looking at the evidence, having a debate.
I want to open this up to our panel for a second. Steve, there are 17 states plus Washington, D.C., where medical marijuana is legal. The president there not, I don't know, keeping the door sort of open to a conversation around legalization. What's your prognosis on this taking a hold, in terms of a national policy?
I think it's really going to take some time. I mean, what you have with Andy there, and it's an interesting story, but what he's talking about in his district is something that's very unique in terms of the role that marijuana plays in the economy there. He's sort of the most expressive candidate in that race when it comes to his support for legalization, but he's not the only candidate running up there who supports it. It's becoming, in that neck of the woods, it's becoming something you have to do if you want to be a successful politician. There's another primary going on today in Texas where a long-serving Democratic incumbent, Silvestre Reyes, is being challenged by a guy who may actually beat him in today's primary. The signature issue in that race, the signature issue of his challenger, who lives right on the Mexico border where the drug wars are really flaring up, is marijuana legalization. So there are pockets of the country where I think this has really strong resonance right now. But I think overall, when you're talking about national politics, when you're talking about people like Obama who are thinking about all the states, all the swing states, I think it's going to be a long time before it catches up in states that aren't like that.
Andy, it's worth noting that I thought this was a very, very telling quote. Our drug czar, Gil Kurlikowski, said to the AP on May 13th of 2010, 2 years ago, in the grand scheme, it has not been successful, speaking about the war on drugs. 40 years later, the concern about drugs and drug problems is, if anything, magnified, intensified. Why isn't that taken, that verbiage, I mean, that's pretty powerful coming from one of our national, one of the folks that's crafting our national drug policy. Why isn't that sort of broader line of argument adopted by the pro-pot legalization community?
Well, it's adopted by a lot of people. There are a lot of issues to argue on. For example, one of the things that I just learned about in Trinity County is that if you are a mother and you give birth, they measure THC, and if they find THC, there's a very good chance that they're going to take your kid away and put it in foster care, and then the counties get paid $15,000 for that. It's just that People don't know what it's like to live in a culture of marijuana. People have all these strange images, and we have these vested interests who just have perpetuated this horrible persecution for so long. It's just alien to most people. Most people also think of it as something to be defensive about, and that's hopefully one of the things that's going to change because of my campaign. There's no reason why people who are medical marijuana smokers should feel shy or defensive about taking their medicine. It improves the lives of thousands of people, and there's a huge area of research yet to be done on health effects. One of my opponents is a medical marijuana doctor, and he tells me extraordinary stories about removing seizures, 400 seizures a day in one patient down to 4. So there's a whole cultural education project that has to happen here.
And it is indeed part of a larger cultural battle that I think will play out in states where, as Steve said, you wouldn't think there would be a lot of debate about legalizing marijuana. Andy Caffrey, thank you for joining us. Good luck. We will be watching the campaign with bated breath.
Thank you very much.
Coming up, First Lady Michelle Obama speaks out about her new book, Beats, and whether she would ever run for president. We'll hear her latest comments next in What Now?
Hey, listen to this, folks. Looks like the government may soon have yet another way to squeeze more money out of us. This is what they want to do here. Several states are now conducting pilot programs testing cars equipped with GPS tracking devices in hopes they can eventually monitor and tax us for every mile we drive. You would get taxed by the mile. Ooh. You know what we should do? Let's put a tracking device on the money we send the government. This way we can see how much goes to hookers, how much goes to cricket. Make it a two-way street. Make it a two-way street. And CNBC is reporting that America lost 129,000 millionaires last year. Whew. Or as Mitt Romney calls them, an endangered species we have to protect. We have to protect these people. They are, well, and President Obama arrived in Los Angeles today. This is true. His plane landed at LAX from San Francisco at 4:20. 4:20. I can't imagine why he picked that time to arrive. Well, a new book out claims that Barack Obama smoked a lot of marijuana while he was in high school. You know, if I had to choose a candidate I thought was smoking a lot of dope, I would have to go with Romney. No, I mean, he's the one with a short-term memory. Remember, he's the one that said, I don't know exactly what I said, but I stand by what I said, whatever it was. Doesn't that sound like the guy that's high? Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah. And a Democratic candidate for Congress right here in California, a man named Andy Caffrey, says if he wins the election, he will smoke a joint on the steps of Capitol Hill, and if he has to, he will even get arrested. Finally, a politician who makes a promise he can actually keep. There you go. Finally. Thank you. Thank you. Well, there's a rumor going around that suggests President Obama may legalize marijuana as an October surprise to win the election. Well, yeah. And if he doesn't win, at least he'll have a way to mellow out later. So, whatever happens.
lesson one, concept one. You know, obviously everything has ecological tolerances. If the sun went supernova, everything on the Earth and the Earth itself would go beyond its tolerances and be destroyed. Yet, that same sun doing what it's doing and has been doing for a long time. The slight amount of variation that does occur there doesn't push the Earth beyond its tolerances to keep these ecosystems together that all life evolved in. So, how do we look at these limits and tolerances, and how do we use them to develop policy? We do it by understanding the concept of URI and steno. URI is a term that means wide tolerance. Steno means narrow tolerance. So back when I was in high school, I took a special summer school class on tidal marine biology, inshore marine biology, and we got to these tide pools and we would measure the temperature, the salinity, and the pH of the tide pools and then the open ocean every hour during the course of the day. As the tide came in, the tide went out. And this showed the difference between URI and steno very clearly. A creature that has a wide tolerance to temperature is a URI thermal creature. One that has a narrow tolerance to temperature change is stenothermal. Haline means salt, so a creature that can handle a wide change of salinity is URI-haline. One that can handle only a narrow change is stenohaline. Same thing with pH. So, what's the difference between the tide pool creatures and the open ocean creatures? Well, out in the open ocean, as the sun makes its arc across the sky and as a particular area of water goes through the seasons, there's not a very wide change in the temperature of that water because the energy that's absorbed, the heat energy, is absorbed by such a large mass, the entire ocean. So the creatures that live in the top layer of the open ocean are stenothermal and stenohaline, and the same thing with pH. You put them in a tide pool, however, which is where URI-thermal and URI-haline and wide pH tolerant creatures live, and the changes are beyond the tolerance of those fish to survive. They die. Why does this happen? Well, think about the tide pools. When the tide's in, the water, the pH, and the salinity are the same in them as it is in the open ocean, pretty much. The tide goes out, the water drains away, and then it sits in these pools, which are much smaller bodies of water than the entire ocean. You know, they're a matter of square feet, or cubic feet. And so, as the sun makes its arc across the sky, water evaporates. That does two things. It means that the heat that goes into that water is absorbed by a smaller amount of water, and so it becomes hotter. And it makes the water saltier because the proportion of water to salt has changed. There's less water, making it more salty. So it keeps getting more and more salty and warmer until the tide comes back in. So that's the variation that creatures that live in tide pools have to go through, and that's the amount of tolerance they develop as they evolve. All of these things develop with evolution. The creatures that were in tide pools that couldn't handle it, they died off a long time ago. So, what does this have to do with human beings? Well, if we start looking at ourselves the same way, in a natural way, an anthropological way, an ecological way, we too evolved, and our tolerances, both physical, culturally, psychologically, have their tolerances, they have their limits. It's not about putting them in the category of URI or steno, but it shows that we do have very specific tolerances, even if we can't define them. For example, if the atmosphere were 150 degrees, we'd all be dead. We all know that. if it was 25 degrees below zero, we'd all be dead. Well, our tolerances are somewhere in between, and we've been able to expand them because we have ways of heating ourselves external to food. We have clothing, we have shelters of all kinds, we have fuels that we can burn. So that allows us to take those things to go into these areas beyond, you know, a pre-technological human's tolerances and be able to tolerate them. But there are limits. And there are limits to how much CO2 can go into the atmosphere without destabilizing the world's climate systems, and destabilizing them enough that we start to lose all of our growing seasons. Entire crops die out. That rainforests are dried up just enough that they start to all light on fire. There are points where these things happen. So what we have to do as activists, as our politicians have to do this, as citizens, we have to teach this to our kids, is we have to ask the question, what are these tolerances? And what do they tell us about how much we have to change ourselves and our society, and in what ways, and in what time frame? So how much do we have to change, and how much time do we have to do it? That is the first question we have to ask for determining all other policies in our society. The economics has to be built around making sure that we do not go beyond these tolerances, absolutely, because these are the tolerances that keep the spaceship together enough that it sustains human life in outer space. And if you destroy that, puncture a hole in the space station or the space shuttle, it blows up. That's beyond the tolerance. Well, we can do similar kinds of things by altering climate systems and changing sea levels and destroying entire crops and entire nations. So we have to look at, are we doing this now? How close to it are we? And if we're real close, we have to stop doing those things immediately. And because we must do those things, we have to cushion the shock in our society. The people who are most affected by stopping that have to also feel secure and have to be brought through this with support and a sense of security and a sense that they aren't losing everything and going crazy. We have to do this with compassion and a national and international spirit of solidarity. We have to do it by encouraging a spirit of compassion and wanting to work together in a team to make it better for all of us and to keep all the things we love together, all the species, all the places, all of our freedoms, and all of the things that enrich our lives. So that's what it's all about. And so we have to shift our politics now to something that is actually dealing with things on these levels. And that's what my campaign's about. And no one else's campaign is about that, at least right now, which is why I'm the person who should be elected in the 2nd District. There's no one else who's even close. Tax the rich now. New, green America. And every other country. So let's talk about wellness. Psychological tolerances. Those things developed in nature too. For example, since we were tribal and clan creatures, our psyches need to have that kind of connection with that kind of number of people in that kind of an intimate way for us to feel in balance. And there are many, many subtle things like that that you can see exemplified when you look at other primates in the zoo. I would propose that we humans are as screwed up and out of touch with reality and as crazed out of our minds compared to tribal peoples, pre-industrial peoples, as any monkey is in the zoo compared to that same monkey or ape in the wild. You cut the creature off from the things that it's been a part of, its ancestors. hundreds of thousands, millions of years, and they are beyond their tolerances. So that's why everybody's so crazy, why everybody's doing things against their own self-interest. They're just completely out of balance on all these different levels. So what do we do about that? Herbert Marcuse gave several lectures at my college before he died, where he was a professor emeritus, about his work studying the intersection of Freud's analysis of the human psyche and Marx's analysis of society. He was basically looking for answers to the questions, how does society mess with the psyche? And of course, how does the psyche create balance by creating what kind of society around it? So he was part of something called the Frankfurt School with people like Erich Fromm, and this lecture was very interesting. Again, going back to an anthropological way of looking at it, the question is, well, what is a healthy human being? I mean, what is it like? How do you categorize it? What qualities does it have? And he divided people into two groups. Emancipatory is the natural state. It comes from what he calls eros. It's the erotic, connecting, we are all in it, we're all one, life-loving, in tune with the rhythms of nature, helpful, caring, compassionate. Those are the natural tendencies of humans, because naturally, evolution would reinforce those behaviors to keep tribes together. If a tribe is together, by definition, there has to be a certain level of connection and cooperation. So those behaviors, over the almost 200,000 years that our species has existed, have become essential to us staying within our psychological tolerances. So naturally, putting people in jail and taking those people away from their families completely mess up both the people in jail and the people who are out of jail, who love them and who need them. They're both thrown into states of, well, they're sort of figuratively put in a situation like being put in a zoo. They're domesticated. They're taken away from their connection, and therefore away from the lessons that those connections would teach them, so that they would do the things that would be sensible, that would be in balance, and that would be supportive of a culture of wellness and connection and community. So, that is the emancipatory nature of human beings, the opposite of original sin. Original sin is the exact opposite of reality in terms of what true human nature is. So what happens when you put that person in a socially engineered, mechanized social structure? What happens when you make people work 9 to 5? What happens when you put kids in school in which they're taught one thing for an hour, have 5 minutes break to go learn something completely different another hour, where they don't get up or go to sleep any differently depending upon what season it is, where everything is temperature controlled and humidity controlled, so that the summers and winters are almost the same experience for most of the hours of anybody's life as they go through the year. These things all disconnect people from what they would experience living in connection with the rest of nature, the rest of the earth. And so what we need to do is try to shape society so that people have fewer and fewer of these social structures messing with them. Because what happens is, when you do this to a person, they start to spring painful leaks, psychological leaks, sometimes physical pain. Sometimes they develop compulsions, they get fat, they watch too much TV, they don't exercise, they don't hang out with people anymore, they just stay with their family, with a remote control, home theaters, widescreen TVs. Computer games, computers, internet. Not outside, not with other species. Controlling what species you're with, controlling what your immediate environment looks like, not being put in a natural environment that tells you certain things. So your orientation changes. Your orientation changes to being what Marcuse called compensatory. Your orientation becomes not towards releasing all of this joyous, connecting, loving energy, but towards stopping these leaks, these pains. It's an orientation of defense, of stopping pain. I've got to stop this pain, that pain. I'm crazy over here, I hurt over here, I'm eating crappy food, so I'm internally out of balance there. I'm not like I should be because I'm watching what I should be on TV and I'm not like that, so how should I be? I'm confused. All of these things are like little leaks in a hose, little holes, little pinprick holes that sprout little bursts of water. And so what happens is, it's like putting your hand on the end of the hose and you just build up pressure. And you have all these leaks and you go through your whole life just trying to find different ways of alleviating your suffering, alleviating these various pains. And you have so many of them that you just kind of shift from one to another. And you are offered solutions in the culture around you in the form of commercial solutions. Instead of having healers, food producers, spiritual people in your tribal community telling you things that allow you to become in balance. You're taught things because they will make someone money. You're given options that require you to stay in the commercial game, to make money, to buy solutions to your problem, to buy the salves that will alleviate your suffering. So we have to get people into a situation where those sufferings stop enough that their natural emancipatory energy can come back through them. It's very zen, actually, be here now. Well, when you're emancipatory, you are like living the hose of water that is bursting through you out into the world. You are in the moment by definition, like you're in the moment when the hose is splashing water. That's a wild human. That's a self-actualized human being. It's a person who controls their destiny, but does it in concert with, and easily in concert with the vast majority of the people that one encounters in their life and in their community. And they don't have too many things to think about. There's a book called Western Civilization in Biological Perspective by either an Australian or New Zealander named Stephen Boyden. It has a chart there that was made from studying tribal peoples that basically was a list of qualities that were conducive to well-being in human beings. And I read this as qualities that allow a person to live their emancipatory self. So if you look at this list and you see things you're not doing, you understand a way that you have a leak, a pain that you are trying to stop. If you can change that, you can stop trying to plug that leak. And that's one less pain you have to deal with. And if you stop enough of those, you can tune in much, much more with each one to this emancipatory way. You can start to intentionally do things that encourage your emancipatory way, I think. And kind of compassionate work for others is a way of releasing that. So if you feel blocked up by your life, go out and volunteer. Do something that's really helpful to someone, and then they will send back love to you, and that will help you out a little bit, at least as a release for a while, from the craziness that you've been forced to live in. And so it gives you a good little break instead of a smoke break or a drink, a little love break, like giving to others, like being connected. That's the good thing to do. You basically try to develop more connection to generations, to the different sexes, different people who have varied ideas about things, about reality, politics, about anything. Just kind of get connected to those folks and have it become natural. Have it be something that is whole to you, not something that's strange or alien or frightening to you. So this list have things like being able to go to sleep when you want to, get up when you want to. That's conducive to well-being. So that's something you have to get to go to school, go to work. You're being screwed up. It's throwing you off. Another thing is working in small groups on medium time frame projects
that have a pretty good likelihood of success. That's kind of interesting. Who would have thought that that was essential for human beings?
Yeah, I can see that. Makes sense to me. You know, people do it all the time. You have a church fundraiser or the K-Mud Fund Drive. You have these things that you kind of come together around for a few weeks or a few months. And it's very connecting. And kind of that groove, that glow of connectivity, especially with radio fund drives, kind of tends to go out and it's contagious. And it kind of feel people having more of a giving, connecting kind of energy. So we can create these kinds of connection zones, liberation zones. That's something anybody can do regardless of politics. Just kind of create this space in larger and larger areas around you and bring more and more people into that. And just expand it outward, this sort of wellness that comes from reconnecting to eros, from being here now and from being, once again, connected to your fellow humans, your tribal cohorts, your clan members, and your fellow species, and your ecosystem where you live. Bioregionalism, which I think should be the organizing principle
for how we make this change, is a great way for people to get reconnected because they have to learn about the species, the ecosystems, the soil, the climate, all of this stuff in order to come up with an economic plan that they can even remotely claim can lead to sustainability within that ecosystem. So that's a way of re-ecologizing the psyches of masses of people all over the place. Everyone everywhere has to do this assessment where they live, whether it's Kansas, Northern California, New York City, or the Everglades. So there are ways that we can make ourselves well, individually and collectively, ways that we can suddenly find ourselves acting more sanely in our political activities, in terms of what we put into our heads, from watching TV to what we read, the kinds of things we talk about, the kinds of ways we use language and the subject we talk about when we talk about religion and spirituality. And of course, we'll have more awareness of the things that we just kind of put into our shadow self, the things that we'd rather not look at, and hope somebody else takes care of, like the homeless people. And they're crap, literally. Just take away the porta potty, take away the bathroom, and these people will go away. You think totally insane? No, they'll just take a crap in front of your business. That's madness. That's disconnection. That is not pursuing wellness. That's pursuing me over everything else. And in a spaceship, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work because who you ignore can blow up the spaceship if you don't get along with them. No, it's all about wellness and connecting. It's all about constructing what we want pragmatically that we can see will actually solve the problems. Because we've actually looked at the problems and have a really good assessment of what they are and are perpetuating all these lies, all this bullshit that the whole right wing is spewing, climate deniers and the rest of them, the name callers. Those people just have to wither off and die because everyone ignores them because they're so tuned in to coming together, and the glow of all this emancipatory energy that just grows and grows and grows like a fire, warm everybody up that comes near it. That's the way to go. And we can redirect our society that way in many, many ways. We can do it in our own lives, we can do it in how we talk, and I want to do it in the political realm. We can demand it, we can constantly keep telling the same thing over and over again to our leaders, and we constantly implement what matters to us. We influence things in the direction we want them to go. We just keep pushing where it should go, hold our focus on what needs to be done, and on staying connected, and on staying well. That's how you make change. That's how you bring the hoop together. That's how you have individual wellness. That's how you have societies that make more sense. And therefore, that's how you have humans that live in balance with their ecosystems. Problem solved.
Come on in. Hi, I'm about to do a radio interview. Hi, I'm calling for Herb. I'm his guest. Hi. Yes. Well, I'm at this phone, so I guess you can call it. Make sure you call extension 13. I'm on my cell phone now. And were you able to get extension 13 in there? Okay. Very good. Bye. Yep. Hello? Yes. Whew. Okay. Okay. Hi, Herb. How are you? Well, infrequently, I have a homelessness show called The Least Among Us.
which is on whenever they can fit it in. No, it's, yeah, KMUD, KMUD. And I do a bunch of one-off programs. I'm going to be doing a Captain Beefheart special on Saturday for 2 hours. Sure. Well, I grew up in Los Angeles. I was born in 1957, and the year before that was the smoggiest LA on record. And I grew up very upset that I was being poisoned by the atmosphere. So from a very early age, I realized that after watching Jacques Cousteau and seeing, the oceans getting polluted, that all of these things were really bothering me, even more so than the Vietnam War. And so my whole life has been as an environmental activist and also, as I mentioned, with homelessness, a social and community activist. So I started off with a background in science. I went to UC San Diego, and they have the Scripps Institution of Oceanography.